Hello Seekers, I've had a request from a client, we will call her Dr. C, about a love relationship that she is in. She has asked for a yes/no answer, and this is about romantic love. So I shuffled off screen and I came up with two piles. You will first of all see I've got a pink Himalayan salt in the shape of a heart, because this is a romantic reading, yes or no, to do with a love relationship. So the Himalayan salt pushes away negativity, keeps things pure and positive, and of course the heart is for love. And you'll see I've got lots of quartz and rose quartz, which is the eternal stone of love. So on the two piles here, we're going to look at the situation, we're going to look for a yes or no answer, and then we're going to look at an archetype. This is magnesite and iolite. It's quite difficult to see this iolite, but it's got a very deep blue sheen to it. There's what it looks like raw. I wonder if you can see. Anyway, I must stop. I love crystals, but let's stop playing with them. Let's start with the iolite pile. We'll move the magnesite pile out the way. Here's the iolite. And so this is the situation, which is the balance card. And the challenge in the situation is the material and spiritual prosperity. So we will put those like that. This is the angel card that gives a yes/no answer. This says, don't stop. And the archetype card is the eternal child. So, in connection with Dr. C and her question, if her romantic partner is a yes or a no, this pile suggests the balance card is about keeping things obviously in balance, but it's about using all the elements. The swords, which is thought, cups, which is emotions, pentacles, which is being grounded and being in the physical world, and wands, which is passion, it's fire, it's about using initiative. So the key thing in this relationship is for Dr. C to approach this relationship with an attempt to keep all of the different elements in balance. The challenge is that there may be a sense of, this is in the challenge position. So although the card is material and spiritual prosperity, it's about the lack of, because it's in the challenge position. So there may be an element here, if you've chosen this pile, there may be an element here of lacking, almost of poverty consciousness, of feeling that you'll never be loved, of feeling that there's no hope, that whatever relationship happens fails. It's always feeling the outsider. It's feeling that whatever you do, spiritually or materially in love relationships, they won't prosper. And that's the challenge. The challenge is to shift that perception from a sense of lack in material and spiritual prosperity to a sense of anything's possible. And that can be done by keeping in balance. Because if the thoughts, the habits, the bad thinking habits that we have, that little hamster in the wheel in the brain that goes round and round saying, I failed before, I'm not going to do it, I can't do it, I'm not going to do it, I'm always unlucky in love. If you keep those thoughts away and in balance them out with decent emotions, stay grounded, keep your passion going, but don't be too passionate. This card is this situation card calls for the golden mean, which is walking that middle path between don't be too in love, but don't have up too many boundaries. Don't be too open, don't be too closed. And the challenge is going to be that there may be a desire to be too closed because of this card of material and spiritual prosperity being in the challenge position. The angel question, the angel answer to the question yes or no is don't stop. So that I would take as a yes. I think this is an encouragement to carry on with this relationship, to move forward, to keep things in balance, to make sure that you keep your mind frame positive, to shift from this sense of that there's never going to be success in a love relationship. Move away from that poverty consciousness into a consciousness that, yes, I can have a successful relationship. It doesn't matter what ancestral patterns I'm living out. It doesn't matter what my parents' relationships were like, what my grandparents' relationships were like. If my ancestors had bad relationships, I can break that cycle. And that is the challenge in this situation, to keep everything in balance while understanding that there is the possibility, there is the hope of material and spiritual prosperity. And the angels are encouraging anybody who picked this pile to carry on. Don't stop. Invest in this relationship. Take it step by step. Take it carefully. Keep yourself balanced and open. And the archetype that is at play here is the eternal child. This archetype is connected to that part of us that is timeless, it's ageless, it's radiant and fearless and seeks joy above all else and at any cost. It may struggle with the responsibilities of an earthly life. It will struggle with physical limitations in a world that demands attention to detail, that demands discipline, that demands, in Afrikaans we have a word, deurhouvermoed, which is endurance. But it's more than endurance. The eternal child will battle with, when things get tough, the eternal child runs off because the eternal child just wants to feel joy. And the eternal child wants to live in the land of the free where everything just flows happily and all is happiness and light. But that's not the real world. And here is a reminder to whoever picked this pile that romantic relationships, yes, the movie type romance relationship is very appealing, but long-lasting, enduring relationships require hard work and an acceptance of the reality that nobody is perfect and that no relationship is perfect. And it's a lot about teamwork and how do you make the romantic team work successfully for both of you. When light, the eternal child archetype, is joyful, it's playful, it accepts everything with an ease, it doesn't question things, and it believes in magic. But when dark, the eternal child is pretty selfish. It can just be adrift because it doesn't have the discipline and the maturity to anchor itself in the hard work that needs to be done, and it can burn out. A good example to think of is Icarus, who didn't obey the rules, and he flew too close to the sun with wings of wax, and he fell to the ground and perished. So what's important about this archetype is to remember that in this situation, if you picked this pile and you want you want to continue with this relationship, you want to keep it in balance, you want to start believing that there is a hope and a possibility that you can find material, spiritual, and emotional prosperity in this relationship, is you need to work on the strengths of the eternal child, which believes in magic, which believes that anything can happen, but you need to guard against the dark shadow of the eternal child archetype, which is not sticking out when times get tough. It's running away at the first sign of hard work, and it's not anchoring yourself in the reality of what a romantic relationship actually involves. So that is the first pile. That is the Iolite pile. So let us now look at the second pile. The second pile has magnesite. This is the situation. Sacrifice. Okay. The challenge in the situation. That's interesting. That's hope. That's a very positive card, but it is in the challenge situation. So we'll look at it just now in detail. This is the angel answer to the yes or no question. Unlikely. So this, if you picked this pile with the magnesite, the white stone, the answer to your question about your love relationship is unlikely. That's not a no, it's just unlikely. And the archetype, this is definitely a less positive pile than the Iolite pile. It's a dead end. The archetype is a dead end. So let's think about this. Okay, so the situation sacrifice. This suggests this is a major arcana card, so it's a big deal. Actually, both of these cards are major arcana, so they're both big deals. And this is the Hanged Man in the traditional, which is all about a new perspective. So the situation here requires for some kind of sacrifice of some kind of beliefs that you have. Perhaps it's belief about what romantic relationships should be. Perhaps it's you have to sacrifice an idea of what you expect from a partner. Perhaps you have to sacrifice some kind of behaviors or behavior patterns. Or perhaps you have to sacrifice time. But the situation is calling for some sort of sacrifice, some kind of new perspective, because whatever you give up will bring in a new perspective. And this relationship is not going to go anywhere. It's unlikely that it will go anywhere unless you make this sacrifice. And this is about, if you pick this pile, this is about you making the sacrifice, not expecting somebody else to make the sacrifice. And a sacrifice, we see that as a loss, but in actual fact, because this is the Hanged Man in the traditional major arcana, that sacrifice that we make could bring us a completely new perspective on how we approach love relationships, and this love relationship in particular. Because remember, this is not a no card, it's just an unlikely card. So that is not a no per se. It is saying that if things remain as they are, if the status quo doesn't change, it's unlikely that this relationship will progress. But there is the possibility that if the necessary sacrifices are made, then there is perhaps some sort of future or possibility for the relationship. Perhaps not what you want, but some sort of hope. Now this is in the challenge position, also a major arcana card. It's still a positive card, even though it's in a challenge position. But I think what it's saying here is that perhaps what you are specifically hoping for as a relationship that is romantic perhaps that's unlikely. Perhaps this relationship is going to be something different. It's still going to be meaningful in your life, but perhaps not as a romantic relationship. And that may be the sacrifice that you're being called on to make, sacrificing the hope and the wish that this is a romantic relationship, a love relationship. Perhaps it's just meant to be a very good friendship, or perhaps it's just meant to be a very good partnership. And this hope is in the challenge position. So it is important to remember that although this relationship, it's not a definite no, it's unlikely to be a romantic relationship, but it doesn't mean that this relationship isn't going to continue in some sort of form. And the dead end archetype. Okay, I've got that in the wrong way. With this being unlikely and hope in the challenge position and a sacrifice being called for, I suspect that this dead end is almost like an impasse. It's like a closed door. You can see there's lots of tangles there. It's a final chapter. So, and yet, it's not dead. I mean, that's a growing hedge. There's life in that image, because that is a tangle of weeds or a tangle of a thorny hedge. So there is life, but it's perhaps not a force that's going to work in the direction that we wanted. It's not going to allow us to move forward as we were hoping for, planning for. It just may be telling us so far and no further along this path. Don't continue because you've reached the end of this particular chapter. We may want to resist it. We may want to break through the dead end, but trying to hold on to what was is going to make the struggle even harder. Because what we need to remember is that every dead end creates space for a new beginning. So we may be so focused on the dead end, wanting what we want, hoping for what we want, which is unlikely to happen, that we are actually not noticing that other doors, there may be doors out there that we don't know, and they are opening all around us. So we need to, if you pick this pile with the magnesite, that's a tongue twister. If you've picked this pile, you need to accept. You need to be honest and courageous enough to accept, adjust, and adapt to seeing that what you were hoping for is unlikely to happen. But if you accept that it's a dead end, you can move forward into a new place. And perhaps reflect back on dead ends, previous dead ends in your past. Where did they lead you to? Did you perhaps find a new door that led to much better situations? And, perhaps when you finally accepted a previous dead end, it opened up a whole new vista for you, and you had a feeling of grace and of relief and of acceptance. And that, I think, is, if you pick this pile about a love relationship, that is what is you're being called to do, to think about previous dead ends and how did you deal with them and where did they lead you. The dead end archetype, when it's working properly, when it's working in the light, it reflects acceptance, it reflects humility, it reflects a kind of relief at knowing that you don't have to expend any more energy on this area. And it also accepts and reveres the fact that change is needed for life to continue. But if it's dark, if it's operating from the shadow, this archetype in this relationship will just bring about inertia. You'll feel stuck. You'll feel that you're not moving anywhere. It will bring in a whole lot of tension, and there'll be a whole lot of sort of gripping, almost unconscious irritations and a feeling of not being able to go where you want to, of not being able to move forward. So I think if you picked this pile in connection with a love relationship, you do need to do some serious thinking about either sacrificing some of your beliefs around this relationship or about romantic relationships in general. And, changing what you're hoping for, because this is a challenge. Although this is a positive card, it's in a challenge position, because it's unlikely that this particular relationship in romantic terms, is going to move away from being a dead end. It's not to say that you need to give up on the relationship completely, but perhaps you need to figure out another way how to make it work. Perhaps you need to, relook at what is important to you in a long-term relationship. And that's about it for today. So whichever pile you chose, I wish you love and I wish you blessings and I wish you much happiness. Until next time, seekers, take care.